Once upon a time, in a small coastal town where the sea always whispered secrets to the shore, there lived a boy named Noah. Noah wasn't like the other kids. While others played games and chased the tides, Noah spent hours building small wooden boats. Not for fun, but because he believed that beyond the endless ocean there was another world waiting for him. Everyone said he was foolish. "The sea has no end," they laughed. "You're just wasting time." But Noah didn't listen. Every evening he sat by the edge of the water, sending his tiny boats into the waves, dreaming that one day he would follow them. One fateful night, under a sky full of stars, Noah made a decision. He gathered wood, ropes, and old sails. Piece by piece, in secret, he built a real boat, small, fragile, but strong enough to carry a dream. No goodbyes, no maps, just hope. And one silent morning, before the sun could rise, Noah pushed his boat into the unknown, becoming a voyager no one ever expected. The ocean was cruel. There were storms that nearly shattered his boat, waves that tried to pull him under, nights so dark that Noah couldn't tell the sky from the sea. There were moments he thought he would never make it, but in the middle of his fear and loneliness, Noah remembered something. The ocean may be vast, but so is a dreamer's heart. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. Just when Noah's strength was about to break, he saw it. A faint light at the edge of the horizon, a new land, a place no map had ever shown. He wasn't hallucinating. He had found it, the world he always believed existed. In this new land, people spoke different languages, wore strange clothes, and sang songs Noah had never heard. Yet when they saw the broken little boat and the boy who had crossed the endless sea alone, they didn't laugh. They welcomed him like a hero. Because here, dreaming big was not something to be mocked. It was something to be honored. Noah grew up in that land. He became a builder, a teacher, and a storyteller. He built bridges across rivers. He built schools on mountains. He taught children how to dream beyond what their eyes could see. And every year, on the same night he had set sail, he would stand by the shore and whisper to the ocean, "Thank you for testing me. Thank you for making me strong." Many years later, when Noah's own hair had turned gray, a new generation of dreamers built their own little boats, setting off into the unknown, because one silent voyager had shown them the way. The new land Noah discovered was nothing like he had imagined. The trees were taller, their leaves a strange blue-green color. The rivers glowed under the moonlight. And the people, they smiled not with suspicion, but with open arms. At first, Noah felt like a stranger. He couldn't speak their language. He didn't know their customs. Many times, he sat alone by the edge of the village, carving little boats from driftwood, wondering if he truly belonged. But this land had a rule. Here, it was not your past that mattered. It was the courage you carried into the future. One evening, as Noah carved a small boat, a young girl approached him. Her name was Lena. She watched him work with curious eyes, then offered him a small piece of bread. No words were spoken, but in that simple act of kindness, Noah found something powerful, a connection deeper than language. Slowly, Noah began to learn their ways. He learned how they built homes from living trees, how they sang songs to call rain, and how they believed that every dream had its own spirit. They called Noah the Dream Bringer, not because of the boat he arrived in, but because he had dared to follow a dream across a merciless sea. As the seasons changed, Noah became more than just a guest. He taught them things he had learned from his own world: how to build stronger boats, how to map the stars, how to dream even bigger. The village grew. Children who once played by the rivers now dreamed of crossing them. Farmers began to imagine new fields beyond the forests. Mothers sang songs of courage to their babies. But not everything was easy. Far beyond the mountains, dark clouds were gathering. Another tribe, bitter and broken, watched Noah's village from afar. They didn't believe in dreams. They believed only in power. They saw the growing village as a threat, and they made plans to destroy it. One cold night, while the villagers celebrated a festival of dreams, a fire lit the horizon. An army of raiders stormed toward them, wild, angry, relentless. The villagers panicked. They had never fought before. Noah stood among them, feeling the old fear rise in his chest. He was just a boy once, lost and scared on the sea. Now he was their hope, and he knew he had to act. "We are not warriors," Noah said, "but we are dreamers, and dreamers build, dreamers protect." In the darkness, Noah remembered how he had survived storms bigger than this. He taught the villagers how to use their strengths, how to defend without violence, how to protect without hate. They built barriers using the living trees. They created warning signals using the river's light. They worked together, not out of fear, but out of faith. And when the raiders came, they found not a weak village, but a united force, a force that would not let go of their dreams. The battle was not easy. There were moments when it seemed all would be lost, but courage, once shared, becomes unstoppable. By dawn, the raiders had fled. The village stood, bruised but unbroken. In the aftermath, Noah stood on the highest hill, looking at the sunrise. He realized something deep in his heart. Crossing the ocean had not been the end of his journey. It had only been the beginning. Now, he was not just a voyager. He was a leader of dreamers, and his voyage, the true voyage, had only just begun. The sun rose gently over the quiet village. Smoke from the small fires of breakfast curled into the sky. The sea, once wild and endless, now seemed calm, almost protective. Noah stood at the edge of the village, watching the waves that had once tried to swallow him whole. He closed his eyes and whispered, "Thank you for bringing me here." But there was no time to rest. Victory over the raiders was only the beginning. The village needed more than survival. It needed hope. It needed purpose. It needed a future. And Noah, the boy who had once been lost at sea, was now the one who had to lead them into it. Rebuilding the broken. The village had suffered greatly during the attack. Houses were burned. Fields were trampled. Families mourned for what they had lost. Noah gathered everyone in the village center, young and old, strong and weak. He climbed onto a large rock, looked out at the tired, wounded faces before him, and spoke. "Dreams are not meant only for peaceful times," he said. "Dreams are our shelter when the world breaks around us." The villagers listened, hearts heavy but eyes wide. Noah showed them how to rebuild, not just with wood and stone, but with trust and love. The children, once shy, now carried water and helped repair homes. The women stitched tents and cared for the wounded. The men, who once doubted themselves, began to build stronger structures, homes that could bend with the storms, but never fall. They didn't just rebuild a village. They rebuilt their spirit. The School of Dreamers one evening, as the golden sun dipped behind the mountains, Noah sat by the fire, carving small boats with the children. A little boy named Aaron asked, "Noah, will we always be afraid? Will they come back?" Noah paused, then smiled gently. "Fear is part of the journey," he said, "but so is courage. And every time we choose to dream bigger than our fear, we win." That night, an idea sparked in Noah's mind. A school, not of reading and writing, but of dreaming. A place where every child would be taught how to believe when no one else does, how to build when others only destroy, how to trust, the voice inside when the world grows dark. Thus, the School of Dreamers was born. It wasn't made of fancy walls or expensive materials. It was a circle of stones by the river, under the open sky. And there, the first dreamers learned not just to survive, but to soar. Gathering the dreamers' word began to spread. Travelers from distant lands came to see the boy who had crossed the endless sea. Some were skeptics, some were warriors, some were wanderers with broken hearts. Noah welcomed them all. "If you have a dream," he would say, "this land is your home." They built new homes, new bridges, new gardens. Together they turned a tiny village into a thriving city of dreamers. No flags of war were raised. No armies marched. Only builders, creators, teachers, and protectors filled the land. The darkest test, but peace never lasts forever. From across the mountains came a man named Varos, a warlord driven by greed and fear. He hated dreamers. He believed that only strength could rule the world. When he heard of Noah's city, peaceful, powerful, without weapons, he saw it not as a miracle, but as a threat. Varos gathered an army far larger and crueler than anything the dreamers had faced before. He marched toward them with fire and iron, determined to crush their hope. The night of shadows, as the army approached, fear gripped the city. Some villagers whispered, "We should run. We should surrender." Noah stood before them, calm and unwavering. "Running will not save us," he said. "Surrendering will not protect our dreams. Only standing together as one will." But even Noah knew this battle would not be won by strength alone. It needed something deeper. It needed a miracle of belief. The dreamers stand on. The night before the invasion, Noah called every dreamer to the city square. He told them stories of a boy who had crossed an endless sea, of a village that had risen from ashes, of every small victory that had built the dream they now lived in. Tears filled many eyes. Hands gripped each other tighter. Hearts pounded not with fear, but with purpose. "Tomorrow," Noah said, "we do not fight for land. We fight for the right to dream." The final battle at dawn, Varos's army attacked. But they found more than a city. They found a people who fought not with swords, but with unity. Traps were laid using clever engineering. Walls shifted and reformed using living trees. Rivers overflowed, guided by canals, drowning the enemy's advance. And in the heart of it all stood Noah, leading not with violence, but with vision. Every dreamer fought beside him, side by side, heart to heart. The battle raged for hours. The earth shook with the fury of it. And when the dust settled, Varos's army, broken and humiliated, fled into the mountains. The city stood. The dream endured. The dream lives. On years passed, Noah grew older. His hair turned silver. His hands, once strong, became slow, but the fire in his heart never dimmed. He watched as new leaders rose, leaders who had once been children, sitting by the fire, listening to his stories. They built new cities, new lands, new dreams, and across the world people began to hear of the Dreamer's Land, a place where anyone, no matter how small, could find a home for their hopes. Noah's last voyage, one evening, sensing his time was near, Noah climbed into a small boat, the same way he had begun his journey all those years ago. He drifted out into the quiet sea, under a sky filled with 1,000 stars. No one knows exactly where he went. Some say he found another new land. Some say he became part of the sea itself, but one thing is certain. Wherever there are dreamers, wherever there are those who dare to believe against the odds, there, Noah's spirit lives on. The years melted away like mist under the morning sun. The city that Noah had built, with hands roughened by storms and a heart softened by dreams, became a legend in its own time. Noah's name was spoken not with fear, like the names of kings and conquerors, but with reverence, like a sacred prayer. Children played in fields where once only ashes remained. Scholars gathered beneath trees that had been planted by survivors. The winds that once howled with despair now carried songs of hope. At night, when the fires flickered low and the stars peered down like ancient watchers, the elders would sit and speak of the boy who crossed the sea. He was no hero, they would say. He was simply a dreamer too stubborn to give up. And that, the elders knew, made him the greatest hero of all. The tree of memory. In the center of the city stood a mighty tree taller than any tower. Its roots were so deep that some said they touched the bones of the earth itself. Its branches stretched toward the heavens, cradling nests of birds who had crossed oceans themselves. This tree was known as the Dreamer's Tree. On its bark were carved thousands of names. Names of those who dared to dream, names of those who dared to build, names of those who dared to believe, and at the highest point, barely visible except to those who looked closely, was a single word carved with trembling hands: Noah. The hidden journal long after Noah disappeared into the horizon. A group of curious young dreamers, led by a bright-eyed girl named Lyra, stumbled upon something hidden in the oldest roots of the dreamer's tree. It was an ancient chest, sealed tightly with bindings of salt and sand. With great care, they opened it. Inside, they found a small carved boat, worn smooth by countless hands, a battered map with trails winding not across lands, but across stars, and most precious of all, Noah's final journal, bound in faded leather, still pulsing with the scent of the sea. The first page read, "To those who come after me, you are the dreamers now. Carry the fire. Never let it die." A new age. Begins Lyra and her companions were electrified by Noah's words. They knew, deep in their hearts, that their journey was just beginning. They called themselves the wayfarers of the dream. Together, they made a pact. They would not hoard Noah's wisdom. They would carry it beyond the mountains, the deserts, the seas. They would sow dreams wherever hopelessness reigned. Each wayfarer carried with them a seed from the dreamer's tree, a copy of Noah's journal, a promise written in their own blood, to dream boldly, to live freely, to build fearlessly. Thus began the second voyage, not by a single boy, but by thousands who refused to be chained by fear. Across the wide world, the wayfarers split into groups and journeyed across the globe. Across frozen tundras, where the sun barely kissed the earth, they built towns of fire and laughter. Across burning deserts, where even shadows trembled, they raised cities where water sang in the fountains. Across jungles thick with vines, they wove villages into the trees, living in harmony with the earth itself. Wherever they went, they taught. Not how to conquer, but how to dream. Not how to fight, but how to build. Every stone laid, every song sung, every child taught, became a ripple in the endless ocean of Noah's legacy. Trials of the dreamers, of course, the road was not easy. Many times the wayfarers faced enemies who laughed at their ideals. They were mocked as fools, tricked by warlords, betrayed by false friends. Entire settlements were burned to the ground. Dreamers were captured, enslaved, forgotten. But each time they fell, they rose again, because they carried something stronger than swords or armies. They carried hope, and hope, once planted in the soul, grows wild, unstoppable. Lyra's journey, Lyra herself, became a legend. She led her people through the darkest forest, where creatures unseen by any human lurked, and emerged stronger. She negotiated peace between two ancient warring tribes, not by threats, but by sharing stories under the open stars. She faced the death storm of the eastern wastes, a sandstorm so fierce that even the clouds bled fire, and survived by leading her people underground, singing songs to keep their spirits alive. Everywhere she went, she spoke one truth: dreams are stronger than death. The silent festival in honor of Noah every year, across every dreamer's land, a festival was held. It was called the Silent Festival. On this day, no one spoke, no bells rang, no fires roared. Instead, people sat quietly by the sea or beneath the stars and listened to the whisper of the waves, listened to the hum of the earth, listened to the beating of their own hearts. And in that sacred silence, they remembered Noah, not with noise, but with the infinite, unspeakable language of dreams. Noah's final letter in the deepest pages of the journal, hidden within folds of ancient parchment, Lyra found a final letter. It was addressed simply to the dreamers yet to come. The letter read, "I was once a boy who had no map, no compass, no guide. I only had a heart that refused to stop dreaming. And that was enough. If you are reading this, you already have what you need. Not riches, not armies, not power. You have a spark. Guard it, feed it, trust it. The world will try to drown it. Fear will try to chain it. Doubt will try to bury it. But remember, the ocean that seems endless, the mountains that seem unmovable, the darkness that seems eternal, they are nothing against a soul that dares to dream. Sail on, dreamer. Sail on." The dream never dies. As the sun rose over the new lands, the dreamers marched forward, faces lifted to the sky, hearts blazing with unquenchable light. And far out over the horizon, where the sea kissed the sky, some swore they could see it. A small, solitary boat, sailing forever, driven not by wind or wave, but by a dream that could never die, never die.